I had been in love with Willow for a full 12 years, however, on her 21st birthday. Just because I took the drunk and disoriented her to a hotel for a night of fun, she hated me with all her heart despite that I still got my wish and won her over, marrying her and bringing her home. But what I didn't expect was that this was only the beginning of her revenge on me. Not only did she openly date other men, but she often humiliated me with her words. She hated me for 6 whole years and tormented me for 6 whole years. In the end, a truck passed by, and she finally freed herself from me. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn on her 21st birthday. This time, I decided to let her go, and to let myself go too. Chapter 1. George, come to the Lou's house. Willow had a big fight with her parents at her birthday party, and now she's throwing things around. There was a lot of noise on the other end of the phone, and after saying this in a rush, my mother hung up. I had been reborn on Willow's 21st birthday. Willow and I had been entangled for 12 years, and from this day on, she would start to hate me. But luckily, everything had yet to begin. I opened my phone and quickly scrolled through the school's group chat until I found Willow's current crush. I sent, "Willow is fighting with her parents at home. You should go check on her." After sending the message, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. The memories of my past life flooded into my mind. My mother and Willow's mother were good friends. I was 1 year older than Willow, and we had grown up together as childhood sweethearts. In my previous life, I had also received a call from my mother and hurried over, just in time to bump into Willow, who had just run out of the house. She seemed to have had a little too much to drink, her eyes red, and she kept yelling at me to take her home. Once we got home, she asked me to stay and keep her company for a while. I stayed and had a little more to drink with her, but that night, the alcohol hit us hard. We didn't drink much, but we both passed out soon after. The next day, however, news broke on the school's confession wall about how I had taken Willow away from her birthday party and spent the night out. There was even a video of me helping her into the elevator, into the room, and then neither of us came back out. Willow was the school's beauty, and rumors spread like wildfire. Even though the post was deleted, people's gossip was impossible to stop. "Marry me, let's get engaged." Those were the words Willow said to me. I still remember how she said it that day in a white long dress, head lowered, hands clasped together. Everyone around us knew that I liked Willow. It was only natural that we got engaged. I was so happy because of Willow's attitude. We were going to get married. There would be countless days ahead for us to be together. I would love her, protect her, and never let her be sad or cry again. During that time, I felt like the luckiest person in the world. Chapter 2. At the engagement party, a somewhat familiar man walked in through the banquet hall door. Willow's gaze was fixed on him the entire time. After the party, I found Willow hiding in the makeup room, wiping away her tears. I asked, "Willow, is there someone you like?" "You've already gotten what you wanted. Why can't I have someone I like?" Her gaze was icy, and her tone clearly accused me of breaking up her relationship with her lover. But in the 3 years prior, I had never heard of anyone she liked, nor had I heard about her being in a relationship. Although I loved Willow deeply, I never intended to force her into marrying me. Besides, nothing actually happened between us that night. I frowned and said, "Willow, if you don't want this, I'll convince my parents to cancel the engagement." She responded, "Stop pretending. You decide when we get married." Willow glared at me and then stood up, leaving the room. From then on, she harbored a deep hatred for me that lasted 6 years. The phone on the table rang again, interrupting my thoughts. It was my mother. She said, "Didn't I tell you to come? Why did that guy show up instead? Now Willow's gone with him, and your aunt is so upset she can barely stand." I sighed and replied, "Mom, Willow likes him. Of course she'd want to see him at a time like this." She asked, "You've always liked." I interrupted her. "Feelings can't be forced. I'll go over now and take into the hospital for a checkup. That'll be more reassuring." After hanging up, I headed toward the Lou house. This time, I wasn't going to take Willow away, and nothing from my past life would happen again. Even if it did, that man was the one she liked, so it seemed like a good outcome for both of them. Before I knew it, I arrived at the Lou house. Some of the guests who had come to congratulate were still there, comforting Mr. and Mrs. Lou. I quickly composed myself and, along with my mother, saw the guests off before taking into the nearby hospital. After finally getting everything settled, I returned home well past midnight. Chapter 3. Rubbing my temples. I walked into my bedroom and immediately spotted the photo album on the bookshelf. Even after many years, just one glance made my heart ache. Every photo inside was of Willow and me. Opening the album, the first page contained our very first photo together. It was the first time I met her when I was 10 years old. We stood under a peach blossom tree. She was smiling at me, and I was gently removing a petal from her hair. Beneath the photo were the date and time, along with my childish pencil writing, "I like you." I still remember Willow's reaction when she saw that album. It was our second year of marriage, and she no longer acted like she did at first. We would sometimes sit together on the sofa, watching an old movie, but then she opened this album with a look of disgust. She said, "George, so all of this was part of your plan from the start? You're disgusting." She slammed the door and left, and our relationship fell back to square one. What had I done? That photo was from when I was just 10 years old, expressing my purest affection for her, one that made her feel disgusted. Later, I found out the reason Willow hated me was because of the manipulation of her lover. I finally learned why Willow hated me, but there was no more opportunity to explain myself to her, or perhaps she didn't want to hear a word I said. I considered asking for a divorce, but then the Liu family's finances collapsed. If I divorced her at that moment, it would have been kicking them while they were down. I couldn't do that, and I couldn't let Willow face the crisis alone. After helping the Liu family through their financial troubles, I didn't bring up divorce again. Other than meeting with elders, she hadn't returned home, and we had become strangers living under the same roof. The love I had once longed for had completely turned into a business marriage. I even began to think that this was how it was meant to be, and in a sense, we would grow old together, until that man appeared by Willow's side again. At this point, Willow had become an important member of the Liu family, and our relationship didn't affect our business cooperation. But clearly, that man was right. Willow still liked him. In the photo my friend sent, the man was fixing Willow's slightly messy hair, and she looked up at him and smiled, just like the first time I met her. So I said to her, "Let's get a divorce." 6 whole years had passed, and I was tired. Since the men she liked had returned, I would let her have her happiness. At least someone could find happiness. She asked, "What are you trying to do now?" Her voice on the other end of the phone was still as cold as ever. There was a new business deal between our companies recently, and I guess she was worried that I would try to ruin the contract by divorcing her. I said, "It won't affect the business." After a pause, I added, "Let's meet and discuss this in person." I didn't call a driver, but drove myself to her company. But in the end, I never reached my destination. When the truck came barreling towards me, I saw a group of children on the sidewalk. I didn't steer the wheel in time, and everything, the car, the people, was shattered. Chapter 4. George, thank you for taking care of my parents. It was a message from Willow. I frowned. Shouldn't she be with her lover right now? But then again, if that man was the one who orchestrated the incident in my previous life, he definitely wouldn't want to jump into the trap himself. Anyway, I was no longer interested in getting involved in their matters. I exited the chat with Willow and casually removed her from the top of my messages. At that moment, another message popped up. "George, I want to start a business. Will you join me?" It was from my childhood friend David. I paused for a moment, then remembered that David had asked me the same thing in my previous life. But back then, I was out of it, and then I got caught up in deleting videos and handling rumors, followed by getting engaged to Willow. The conversation never went anywhere. Thinking about this, I quickly replied to him, "Sure, I'm in. Let's go tomorrow." His response was, "What?" David clearly didn't understand at first. I replied, "Before starting a business, you need to do some research. You can't just stay local. That's not real entrepreneurship." He responded, "True, true. With George around, we're bound to make some serious money." After discussing our ideas for a while, I started packing my things. As I stood up, the photo album that had been on my lap fell to the floor. After a brief moment of thought, I tossed it into the trash can next to my desk. The next day, after informing my parents, I headed to S City with David. Leaving here wasn't just about starting a business. It was also a way to distance myself from Willow. This time, everything between Willow and me ended here. That was enough. I wouldn't entangle myself with her anymore, and I wasn't willing to spend any more time and energy on this. When we arrived in S City, David and I quickly found a business opportunity. With the experience from my previous life, I knew exactly what could make money now. He said, "Bro, we've got everything ready. We just need the funds. David scratched his head. Does this mean we have to go back and ask our parents for money? At that moment, the phone rang. David pulled out his phone and said, "Hey, Willow's calling me. She must be looking for you." He winked at me and stood up to answer the call. I said, "If she asks about me, just tell her you don't know where I am." David hesitated for a moment, but didn't say anything more. He went along with my request. He asked, "Bro, don't you like her?" David looked at me in confusion. I laughed and replied, "She's already with someone. Do I look like the kind of guy who breaks up couples?" I got up, patted David on the shoulder, and added, "I'll go freshen up." David didn't press further after hearing this, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw his hand almost burning a hole through the phone screen. I knew he was already broadcasting this juicy news to the group chat. I couldn't help but smile wryly. Well, that's fine too. Chapter 5. I had a peaceful sleep, but was abruptly woken up at 7 o'clock by David. "George, someone's willing to invest in our project." The investor was David's classmate. We met at a tea house to discuss things. The investor said, "My dad wants me to start a business, but I'm afraid I'll ruin the family. I feel like you guys are more reliable than me." Alicia was wearing jeans and a white t-shirt, looking like she had just woken up and rushed over. Alicia's father spoiled her. He didn't just treat her well, but he also regarded her as his successor. But it seemed like Alicia just wanted to take it easy. David said, "Don't worry, if you follow George, you'll definitely make money." He was smiling and handing out tea as he spoke. With Alicia's involvement, we had solved the funding problem. Alicia said, "George, the outfit you chose is too small-minded." Alicia spent quite a while advising David on his outfit, taking clothes for him before turning to me. Today we were attending an industry gathering. I looked at my outfit in the mirror, a full suit, neat and proper, with my tie perfectly tied. I said, "I don't think there's a problem with it." She said, "We're a team, do you understand?" Alicia threw something down from upstairs. I reached out and caught it. It was a tie in the same color as her dress. Since she was the investor, I had no reason to refuse. While I was tying the tie carefully, the other two came downstairs. David was wearing a white suit, paired with a tie matching Alicia's color scheme. They looked pretty good together. I thought to myself, David said, "This actually works. The three of us look like we could be secret agents." He walked up to me, raised an eyebrow, and made a gun gesture. Alicia looked at him blankly and said, "You, a secret agent?" "David, what's wrong with that? It's how they act in the movies." Watching David and Alicia bicker, I couldn't help but relax and smile. This kind of life was nice. Even though Alicia was the investor, she still followed us around everywhere. She was really smart and picked up things quickly. She also offered some insightful opinions, which surprised me. No wonder Alicia's father wanted her to venture out on her own. With her sharp mind, she could succeed at anything. At the gathering, we attended as ourselves, not as the children of our parents like usual. The three of us were a bit nervous. Chapter 6. What I didn't expect was to run into Willow there. After all, I've known her for almost 20 years. From a distance, I could already tell it was her. But the person standing next to her wasn't her lover. Perhaps sensing my gaze, Willow turned towards me. "George," she called out. Her eyes lit up and she seemed a little surprised, letting go of the arm she had been holding. She lifted her skirt and walked towards me. I was momentarily taken aback. The Willow I knew always carried herself like a proud princess. When she was around me in my past life for so many years, I was always the one who took the initiative to approach her. When she was in a good mood, she would call me George, and when she wasn't, she would just nod slightly, acknowledging me. But now, to see her walk towards me with a smile, this was a rare sight. Willow came up to me and tried to take my arm. Instinctively, I slightly turned my body to avoid her. Her expression froze, as though she didn't expect me to react this way. When she looked at me again, her eyes were red. "Hey, Willow." David, sensing the awkward atmosphere, stepped forward and greeted her. He and I had always been good friends, so he also addressed her casually as Willow. Willow didn't respond to David. Instead, she kept her gaze fixed on me. I asked, "Willow, is there something you need?" I sighed inwardly, not wanting the atmosphere to become too tense, so I asked. Only then did Willow take a step back, putting a little distance between us. She lowered her head and asked, "George, could you come back and marry me?" As soon as the words left her mouth, not only was I stunned, but even David beside me looked completely dumbfounded. What was Willow doing? In my past life, I desperately wanted to marry her, but she hated me. In this life, I had let her be with her lover, and now she was asking to marry me again. I asked, "But you already have someone you like, don't you?" I spoke calmly, and to my surprise, when I heard Willow talk about marriage, my heart didn't feel any stirring. It turned out that I really didn't like her anymore. She bit her lip and said, "No, it's not like that. He's just—" Willow hesitated to speak. At that moment, a familiar voice. "Have you seen my brooch?" It was Alicia, having just finished talking to two people and now walking toward David and me. Willow's expression stiffened, her eyes moving from me to Alicia and then to my tie. Alicia asked, "And who's this?" Alicia naturally saw Willow standing in front of me and smiled brightly at her. I said, "She's the daughter of my mother's good friend, Willow." I turned back to answer Alicia's question and added, "Didn't you leave your brooch at home?" Alicia rolled her eyes and reached her hand out to Willow. "Hello, Willow. I'm Alicia, their business partner." David sighed and said, "Do you even know what a business partner is?" David's sarcastic remark caused Alicia to playfully aim a punch at him. Willow turned back, noticing David's tie. It seemed like she remembered something and let out a small sigh of relief. Chapter 7. Alicia asked, "George, what's going on?" After seeing Willow leave, David and Alicia both walked over to me. I said, "How would I know?" "But you didn't even bring your brooch today, Alicia. I thought you were tied down by some love debt, so I came to help you out. Who knew you wouldn't go along with my plan?" Alicia winked mischievously. David responded, "What love debt? George has liked Willow for years. Let me count." He began to dramatically count on his fingers, pretending to calculate. Alicia couldn't help but burst out laughing. I said, "All right, stop embarrassing yourself. There was nothing between me and Willow, and there won't be anything in the future either." I gave David a light slap and then said seriously, "Don't forget why we're here today." Alicia said, "Yeah, that over there is Mr. Law, my dad's friend. Let's go introduce ourselves." Alicia pointed to a person nearby. David and I straightened up and headed in that direction. But clearly, you can avoid trouble on the first day, but you can't escape it on the 15th. After the event, when David and I had just dropped Alicia back off, my mother's call came in. "George, your aunt called and said Willow has nowhere to go. She wants to stay at your place for the night. I know you don't want to be with Willow anymore, but no matter what, she's like a daughter to me. I've watched her grow up." My mom sighed. We grew up together, and over the years, she'd long considered Willow her own daughter. Even though I no longer liked Willow, I couldn't just leave her hanging. I said, "Send me the location, I'll go pick her up." I had long since blocked Willow's contact and didn't want to add her back just for this. David and I met Willow downstairs at a hotel. She was still wearing the same dress from the banquet, looking a little cold as she hugged her arms. When David parked in front of her, she didn't react immediately, only furrowed her brow slightly. I opened the car door and, like usual, helped her into the car. Willow said, "George, why did you drive this kind of car?" Her tone carried some resentment and a hint of disdain. David, who had been smiling and offering her a blanket, froze for a moment, his smile gradually fading. In my past life, I hadn't started my own business yet, and Willow always acted as if she'd do anything for love. I hadn't noticed she cared about these things. Willow seemed to notice David's change in expression. She pursed her lips as if she wanted to say something, but couldn't bring herself to. I asked, "You're already at the hotel? Why are you still coming to my place?" I glanced at the nearby hotel. It looked like Lou's family had arranged it for her. She said, "In the past, our families would always travel together and you were always by my side. But now I'm staying at a hotel alone and I'm a little scared." Willow reached out and tugged at the corner of my shirt, shaking it slightly. Her voice was choked and I could hear the tears in it. I asked, "Then why did you come here alone?" I came to find you. It seemed my mom had told Willow where I was. I sighed and said, "Willow, I know you have someone you like. Now that I'm leaving, it's the perfect time for you to be with him." She said, "After you left, my dad started setting me up with blind dates." Her words took me by surprise. Willow had always been treated like a princess in the Lou family. How could they suddenly push her into arranged marriages? Thinking this through, I finally understood why she had suddenly wanted to marry me when she saw me today. She must have seen me as her lifeline. I frowned and said, I used to like you. But that doesn't mean I'd marry someone who doesn't like me back. The pain of my past life still lingered. We were like water and fire. How could I let that happen again? She said, "No, George, I do like you," Willow explained in a panic. Looking at her expression, I didn't think she was lying, which only made me more confused. In my past life, Willow had been so in love with that guy. How could she have compromised so quickly? This time, not only had she compromised, but now she was here telling me she liked me. She had hated me for 6 years because of that guy. Could it be that she had also been reborn? As if guessing my thoughts, Willow cleared her throat and said, "I found the album you made for me in the trash." It was as I suspected. I let out a small sigh of relief. You should understand why it was in the trash. Willow, who had been wrapping herself up with the blanket, froze when she heard my words. Tears began to pour from her eyes. I handed her a few tissues and helped her adjust the blanket. If she had also been reborn, then some things needed to be said clearly. I said, "Willow, since you already know all this, you should understand that I've never forced you into anything. Now that we have a chance to start over, don't hate me anymore and don't see me as your savior." Willow was still sobbing, so I sat next to her. Scenes from my past life flashed through my mind. There was Willow coldly telling me to get out of her room. There was Willow hysterically questioning me for hitting her lover. There was Willow's gaze that never lingered on me during our engagement party. There was Willow only calling my name when she needed something. There was Willow still a little girl telling me she wanted to marry me. There was Willow standing under a peach blossom tree, smiling at me for the first time. All these moments were the evidence of the 18 years I had loved Willow and the painful 6 years I could hardly look back on. "George, you." The street lamp's light streamed through the car window. I couldn't see Willow's profile clearly, but I knew she was still crying. I said, Don't cry anymore, Willow." I was silent for a while before saying, "Let's stop torturing each other this time." The car had arrived. David cleared his throat and said, "Go ahead." I interrupted David, opening the door and stepping out. There were still some things I needed to take care of for work. I had a meeting tomorrow and had to meet with suppliers. As for Willow, if she wanted, she could still go out with her lover secretly, just like in the past life. But this time it had nothing to do with me. Chapter 8. Willow didn't come looking for me again. However, David occasionally mentioned that Willow had gotten engaged to her lover. It seemed there was some trouble in between, but I no longer cared. The company had been thriving recently. Though it was busy, it was fulfilling. David and Alicia always joked around, but when it came to work, they made a perfect team. Looking at the occasional pink bubbles floating between them, I suddenly felt like I understood something. At lunch, while Alicia was away getting food, I secretly asked David, "Do you like Alicia?" The guy seemed caught off guard by my question, stuttering and unable to respond. I said, "All right, I get it. If you want, I'll help you ask her out." David's ears turned bright red at my words, just in time for Alicia to return from getting her food. She asked, "Hey, what did David do? His ears are all red." David, usually quick-witted and never backing down, couldn't say a word this time and just kept his head down eating. Seeing that he didn't respond, Alicia grew curious and asked, "George, what's going on with him?" I said, "He's in his springtime of youth. Cough, cough, cough." David nearly choked on his food at my comment. Alicia, startled, immediately reached over to hand him water and pat his back. Watching their interaction, I realized what was going on. These two were like a pair of bickering lovers. They didn't need my help to get together. Half a year passed, and the company had gradually found its footing. A few challenges had arisen, but they were all dealt with. At the celebration party, David confessed to Alicia. David, who always appeared carefree, held a big bouquet, his voice trembling. Alicia smiled as she took the flowers and gave him a playful shove on his shoulder, just like usual. Then they embraced. That was love, I thought. To love should be like this, not the one-sided, tortured mutual resentment I had in my previous life. Now that these two had gotten together, they turned their attention to me. David said, "George, how about letting Alicia introduce you to a girlfriend?" Alicia added, "Yeah, George, I have a friend. She's smart and beautiful." When they saw I didn't respond, David dragged a chair over and sat next to me. David said, "George, I'm not sure what happened with you and Willow. The people need to move forward." Alicia chimed in, "Yeah, George, you can't seriously want to grow old alone, can you?" Listening to them banter back and forth, I felt a sudden softness in my heart. Although I hadn't thought about dating again, seeing how happy they were made me feel that having someone you love might not be such a bad thing. So I said, "All right, I'll leave it to you two." I patted both of their shoulders. Everything was different from my past life, and yet, every day felt so fulfilling, until Willow appeared in front of me again. Chapter 9. David said, "George, I ran into her outside the company." David had an awkward look on his face. He had gone downstairs to buy Alicia some of her favorite little cakes, but when he got downstairs, saw Willow stopped by the front desk. He couldn't pretend not to know her, and I understood that. I motioned for him not to worry. David sighed in relief, closed the office door, and went out. Only then did I turn my attention to Willow. She was wearing a white dress with some stains on her shoes. It had been a while since I'd seen her. She looked like she'd lost some weight. When she saw me, she straightened her back slightly. She said, "George, I'm sorry." After not seeing her for so long, her sudden apology made sense to me. She must have realized the misunderstanding between us from our past life was manipulated by her lover. Maybe in my previous life, I secretly hoped she'd realize she had misunderstood me before she died and regret or feel guilty about it. But this time, I really didn't care anymore. I rubbed my forehead and said, "Everything I did for you before, I did willingly. It's all in the past now. You don't need to apologize. Even if you want to apologize, it should be to the me from the past life, the one who's already gone." Hearing this, Willow covered her face with her trembling hands. She said in a sobbing, "It's all my fault. I only realized now I love." Just then, the office door was pushed open. A female voice said, "I want some barbecue this afternoon." I didn't see her yet, but I could hear her voice clearly. It was Anna, my girlfriend and Alicia's best friend. She's kind, smart, and most importantly, she likes me and I like her. We've been together for half a year, and we're like any regular couple, eating, chatting, and enjoying each other's company. Being with her made me realize how much strength a good relationship can bring. I replied, "Okay, I know a great place." I looked at her and couldn't help but smile. When Anna's gaze shifted to Willow, I stood up and walked over to her. Introducing her, "This is Willow, my mom's friend's daughter." Then I turned to Willow and said, "This is my girlfriend, Anna." Anna smiled and said, "Hi. Are you joining us for lunch?" It must have been tiring coming all the way here. Willow froze for a moment, then looked up at me, seeming a little confused about how Anna knew she'd come from far away. I smiled knowingly and looked at the girl beside me. Her eyes, like mine, were filled with a happy smile. Willow asked, "Can I talk to George alone for a moment?" I hadn't expected Willow to say that, but I didn't feel like there was anything I needed to hide from my girlfriend, so I said, "If you have something to say, just..." But before I could finish, Anna interrupted me with a smile. "Sure, I'll wait for you outside." With that, she walked out. When the door closed, Willow finally looked up at me. Tears filled her eyes as she choked out, "I love you, George. After you died in our previous life, I only realized I loved you." Chapter 10. This life, I thought, since you don't like me anymore, I would be with him. But the girl in front of me was crying uncontrollably. In our past life, she always had a stern face when facing me. But this time, it seemed she had endless tears. I sighed and said, "Don't you understand yet? You don't love me. You're just used to me being there for you. Used to me loving you." She denied it, saying, "No, I misunderstood you, I know. Willow, I already have someone I like. I've experienced how happiness comes from being in a good relationship. You should experience that too, just like me. Willow, I hope you can be happy in this life." Willow didn't speak anymore. She just sobbed quietly. I handed her some tissues. I asked, "Do you need me to arrange someone to take you home?" Willow still didn't respond. I said, "You should rest here for a while. Someone will come to take you home soon. Goodbye, Willow." I opened the office door, and Anna was sitting in Alicia's office just across from me. I walked to the doorway of Alicia's office, and David was sharing a small cake with her. Anna, hearing the noise, turned her chair around and smiled at me. The sunset's afterglow drew a line on the floor. If I walked along it, I could hold her hand. Anna gave me a feeling of being delicate and wonderful. She was a smart girl. The sunset landed on her face, and I reached out to hold her hand. She suddenly looked at me and asked, "How did the conversation go with her?" I casually, "Not much. All those past things are over." Unintentionally, Many images flashed through my mind. The past seemed vivid yet fleeting, like the willow trees scattering in the wind. The sunset set and another breeze came. When I returned to the company, the security guard told me that a handsome man had come to pick up Willow. I nodded, understanding that handsome man was of course Makoto. He had been a thorn between me and Willow, and it was his presence that had shattered the bond between me and Willow, childhood friends who had once been inseparable. That little girl who had always followed me around calling me George had hated me for 6 whole years. I didn't know if on the day I died, Willow had shed a single tear for me. On my hospital bed, I lost my focus for a moment and walked to my computer where I received an overtime task. Recently, the company had been growing quickly. There was a project that required a proposal, and the client was mostly satisfied with the first draft. If we closed this deal, it would take the company to a whole new level. Just as I was busy working, my phone suddenly rang. I looked at the caller ID. It was Willow calling. Based on the time, she must have just arrived. I answered the phone and Willow's voice came through. George, Her voice was choked with emotion. I could feel her emotions at that moment, and it seemed she was struggling, but I couldn't comfort her. I asked, "You've arrived, right?" I interrupted her. She said, "I'm here, George. I'm engaged to Makoto. He came to pick me up, and we're going to his place," she said slowly. I replied, I wish you happiness." After saying that, she fell silent. It was a long, awkward silence between us. About a minute later, I heard her sobbing from the other end. She was crying deeply, but by then, we were already like parallel lines, perhaps never to intersect again. I hung up the phone and blocked Willow's contact again. It was to avoid any unnecessary contact between us. It was also out of respect for my girlfriend Anna. In my past life, I had experienced an unhealthy relationship and marriage. I understood the pain those kinds of relationships brought. That's why I didn't want to bring any unfair treatment to Anna. I worked until around 3 o'clock in the morning, finally finishing the proposal. I stretched lazily and headed home. Now I was working hard in S-City and had established a stable career here. My heart had also settled here. I had bought a big house and I had 2 cats living there, one named Ahu, the other Xiaohua. They were also childhood companions, growing up in the house I bought. Ahu was the older brother, Xiaohua was the younger sister. They often played around, but most of the time they were happy. Most of my childhood with Willow was filled with joy, but after we got together, she hated me for 6 whole years. Now, my relationship with Anna was even better. I warmed myself a cup of milk, drank it, and prepared to sleep. The 2 cats ran over to me, rubbing against my arm. After drinking the milk and washing up, I sank into a deep sleep. Who would have known that the next day, I was woken up by the sound of the phone ringing. I looked at the caller ID and saw it was David calling. His voice sounded anxious as he spoke on the phone. "George, something's happened." David's tone instantly snapped me out of my drowsiness. "What happened?" Chapter 11. He said, "Our company's order was stolen by someone." His voice had a sense of urgency. I frowned slightly and replied, "Stolen?" I was also surprised. We had worked hard for this order for a long time. We had revised the proposal several times, and just last night, I received a call from the client's representative asking for some additional revisions. I had immediately responded, sending Anna home, then getting back to work to revise the proposal. I had thought that after a good night's sleep, I would be able to sign the deal with them. The business amount wasn't small. Divided into 3 phases, it was worth $50 million. If we could close it, it would account for a third of the company's target for the year. But who would have thought that it was stolen? I told David, "Take it easy, don't rush." After all, there was no point in panicking over something like this. David calmed down a bit after my reassurance. "George, I don't know the full details yet. All I know is that a company called Willow Tree stole our order." "Okay, I understand. Go check the background of this company. I'll be at the office soon, and we can discuss things when I get there." My mind was stirred. We had put in so much effort for this order, working for 1 or 2 months, and making a huge effort, and now, just like that, it was taken away. Anyone would be upset about this. "Got it," David replied, and we ended the call. I quickly got up, washed up briefly, and headed straight for the office. On the way, I mumbled to myself, "Willow Tree Company. Could this company have anything to do with Willow?" When I got to the office, I went inside quickly. David and Alicia were already there. A few other key management members were present as well. "George, you're here." David greeted me. "Wang Zong." Everyone else also greeted me with Wang Zhong. Alicia gave me a nod. Alicia's brows were slightly furrowed. It was clear that this issue was serious. The other employees in the company also turned their attention to us. I didn't want this situation to affect everyone's work. I said, "Let's go to the meeting room." We moved to the meeting room. Everyone's eyes were on me. However, everyone seemed a bit heavy-hearted. David, being straightforward, stood up and said, "George, the company behind Willow Tree is called Makoto. Makoto is the one who is engaged to Willow." David paused here as if hesitating to say more. I knew what he wanted to say. It was obvious since the company was named Willow Tree. It must have something to do with Willow. But out of respect for me, he held back. I saw that David was uncomfortable, so I said, "Go ahead." David hesitated for a moment and said, "George, do you think this has something to do with Willow? She's been coming to our company a lot recently." I replied, "I don't think so. We haven't had much contact with her. Only our internal team knows about this order. I never talked about it with anyone, and certainly not with Willow." I explained the basic situation. As they listened, their faces changed slightly. "George, but this Makoto is disgusting. First he took the order from you," David said, then glanced at me and stopped halfway through the sentence. David apologized. "Sorry, George. I just find his despicable behavior repulsive." I nodded, understanding David's words. It wasn't just him. I didn't have a good impression of Makoto either. David's words might have been harsh, but they were essentially true. In my past life, he had used despicable methods to steal Willow's heart from me, and now in this life, he was stealing my business. I even thought that the car accident in my past life might have been something he arranged. Alicia suddenly gave David an annoyed look and said, "If you can't speak properly, then don't say anything. Our priority now is to figure out how to respond." After more than a year in the workplace, Alicia had become a sharp and competent professional. David, having been scolded by Alicia, didn't dare say anything more. The other key management members of the company remained silent, their heads down, not saying a word. Now, the issue wasn't from our side. We had been negotiating well with the other company. After a while, seeing that no one was speaking, I said, "David, Alicia, stay here. The rest of you can get back to your work." The others stood up and left. In response, I turned my attention to Alicia and David. For the sake of this company, the three of us had worked hard. The company's current success was inseparable from our efforts. Now the two of them had become a couple. Everything seemed to be progressing toward a beautiful future, but unexpectedly, this little fly in the ointment had appeared. I looked at Alicia and said, "Alicia, you and David need to investigate the situation with this order. Find out if there's any traitor in our company. Also look into Willow Tree. I'm going to meet the head of the other company, Martin." "Okay, George," Alicia said. David also told me, "Don't worry, George, we've got everything covered here." Seeing that they were both on the same page, I didn't say anything further and walked out. I took out my phone and called Martin. The call went unanswered. It rang through, but no one picked up. This could mean either he was deliberately avoiding my call or he was in a meeting without his phone. Given the circumstances, I felt the first option was more likely. He was deliberately not answering. It seemed that the chance to salvage the situation was slim, but no matter what, I still had to try. Chapter 12. After thinking it over, I headed to Martin's company. As soon as I entered the building, the receptionist stopped me. She asked, "Who are you looking for?" I answered truthfully. The receptionist then asked if I had an appointment. I replied that I hadn't made an appointment, but I needed to speak to Martin about an important matter. She smiled politely and said, "Sorry, sir. Without an appointment, you won't be able to meet our boss. Please schedule one and come back later." Her response made my heart sink a little. It seemed likely that the 2 months of effort we put into this project were going to go to waste. This was the collective effort of our whole company. Even if there was just a small chance, I couldn't give up so easily. I didn't enter the building, but waited outside. I waited from morning until finally, I saw Martin in a suit coming down from the building. He was around 40 years old, with no significant beer belly. His physique was actually quite well maintained. As soon as I saw him, I didn't hesitate. I quickly walked up to him and said, "Martin, can we talk?" His eyes fell on me, and the two people accompanying him immediately stepped in front of me to block my way. I tried to push forward, but they blocked me completely. Martin said, "Let him through." At his command, the two men stepped aside. I walked straight up to Martin. Martin, did you look at the proposal I sent you last night? Is there something you're dissatisfied with? He replied, your proposal is fine overall, but we won't be able to give you the order. Sorry, Wang Zhou. His tone carried a hint of apology. I asked, what's the reason for your refusal? I won't go into the reasons, but it's not that your proposal is bad, Martin said, his eyes flicking toward me. Sorry, Wang Zhou. I have a dinner to attend, so I'll be leaving now. With that, Martin turned and walked away. I stood there for a moment, staring at his retreating figure, lost in thought for a few seconds. When I snapped out of it, I realized there was no point in staying here. I left Martin's company and headed back to my own. Once I arrived, I called a meeting with Alicia and David. The content of the meeting was simple. I explained the situation to them. First, I told them that we were probably not going to get the order. Second, I mentioned that our proposal was still good, and we should see if we could find another company in a similar field to collaborate with so that all of our efforts wouldn't go to waste. David listened and said, okay, George. Alicia had no objections either. She said, I'll go arrange it. After Alicia left, David turned to me and said, George, do you know why we lost the order? He looked serious, and I was puzzled why. He said, I did some digging into Makoto. This guy doesn't come from a rich family. The only reason he can run this company is that the Liu family invested in it. I suspect that he got the order because of his connection with the Liu family. David paused for a few seconds. He looked at me with hesitation. I couldn't help but ask, David, when did you start becoming so cautious? Just say what you need to say. David continued, this is still related to Willow. Do you think she might be trying to get back at you out of spite for what happened between you two? I glanced at David. My relationship with Willow was far from simple. We had both been reincarnated. I knew her past, and she knew mine. In our previous life, we were married, but in this life, we weren't lovers, let alone husband and wife. We had gone back to the beginning when we first met. But now, I didn't want to have any further involvement with Willow. I didn't want to repeat the same mistakes from the past. Yet Willow seemed to be actively trying to get closer to me. I couldn't understand why. Wasn't she supposed to hate me? She should have hated me in the past life. So why in this life was she suddenly trying to get close to me? I was confused and unsure of her intentions. I said, I don't think so. This could be Makoto's doing. I remembered that Willow had never been interested in business matters. She liked doing the things she enjoyed. When David heard me mention Makoto, his anger flared up. He gritted his teeth and said, that bastard, Makoto. I'm going to take care of him right now. David started to leave, but I stopped him and said, going after him now won't help. Our priority is still to find a new partner. David nodded, realizing I was right, but he still muttered, our company and Makoto are done for. I agreed. It was definitely over between us, had been over even in our past life. Makoto was a disgusting, despicable man. I sat in my office, starting to look for some information, trying to find possible new partners and see if there was any chance of salvaging the situation. I didn't know how much time had passed when my desk phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID and saw an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't answer such calls, but to my surprise, the caller repeatedly dialed 3 or 4 times. Seeing this, I decided to pick up the phone. When I answered, I waited for a few seconds before a low voice spoke on the other end. Is this George? Yes, it's me. I replied, my voice serious. This is Makoto. I'm glad we're finally talking, he said, his tone clearly dripping with provocation. I paused for a moment after regaining my composure. What do you want? Nothing special, really. I just wanted to let you know that I'm now engaged to Willow. She's my fiancée, and I hope you can keep some distance from her, he said. I frowned, feeling displeased. What bothered me wasn't his request to keep my distance from Willow, but the way he spoke to me, as if ordering me around. I responded coldly. You don't need to talk to me about your business with Willow. I'm not interested, and you don't need to remind me. He replied, that's better, but if you don't listen to me, you'll find out what the consequences are. This time, consider it a warning. If there's a next time, it won't be so simple. His voice turned ominous. I asked, do you really feel proud of using despicable methods to steal this order? It doesn't matter. The important thing is that I won. I've said what I needed to. You should take care. With that, he hung up. Chapter 13. I stood there, lost in thought for a few seconds. My suspicions grew stronger that the car accident in the previous life had something to do with Makoto. Of course, I didn't have any concrete evidence, just a hunch. After some thought, I made a call to have someone investigate Makoto. Although I had asked David to look into it earlier, his investigation had only scratched the surface and hadn't delved deeply enough. So I decided to have someone else conduct a more thorough investigation to see if there was anything suspicious about him. I explained the situation to the person on the other end, who assured me there would be no problem as long as the payment was made. They could find out whatever I needed. I nodded, asking them to get back to me with the results as soon as possible. They told me they'd have an update within a week. After hanging up, I felt a little heavier inside. If Makoto was really someone who would do anything to get ahead, then Willow was also in danger being around him. Maybe I should warn Willow, but I also felt it wasn't necessary. In the afternoon, Anna called me and invited me to dinner. She said she was already waiting downstairs at my office. I agreed and told her I'd be right down. When I saw Anna, her long hair flowed beautifully and she was wearing a floral dress with a big smile on her face. Her skin was fair and smooth and her appearance was the epitome of a southern girl, gentle and charming. "I'm over here, George," she waved at me. I ran over to her and she smiled, asking, "What do you want to eat today?" "It's on me. If you're paying, I'll eat anything." We reached the restaurant and Anna kept her bright smile the whole time. Seeing her so happy, I couldn't help but ask, "Anna, did something good happen today?" "Well, seeing you makes me really happy," Anna replied, which surprised me and warmed my heart at the same time. After she ordered, she handed me the menu and asked what I wanted. I looked at the menu and saw that everything she ordered was something I liked. I took the menu from her and picked a few dishes she enjoyed. I said, "I'm happy to see you too." "Good. Ha ha." She laughed and then said, "I heard from Alicia that you're in some trouble. Do you need my help?" "I'm always here for you." She made a playful fist with her hand. I waved my hand, saying, "It's not time for you to step in yet." Suddenly, my phone on the table rang. I looked at the caller ID and saw it was an unknown number. I initially thought it was Makoto calling again. I considered hanging up, but Anna suddenly said, "Answer it." I looked at her and saw she was propping her chin up, her face full of curiosity as she stared at me. After a brief hesitation, I pressed the answer button and turned on the speaker. To my surprise, the voice on the other end was Willow's. "George, it's me. You blocked my number, so I had to call from a different one." I furrowed my brows. "What's going on?" At that moment, Anna made a gesture with her hand, mimicking walking with two fingers. I understood what she meant. She was signaling that she would step away to give us space to talk. But I quickly shook my head and said, "You don't need to leave, Anna." As soon as I spoke, Willow asked, "Is she with you?" I replied calmly, "Yes, I'm having dinner with Anna." I had no reason to hide my relationship with Anna. I didn't want to face such an unhealthy love dynamic. Anna, hearing me, stood up and greeted Willow cheerfully. "Hi, Willow." There was silence on the other end of the line for a minute or two before Willow spoke. "George, I'm calling just to let you know that what happened with your company has nothing to do with me. It was all Makoto's doing." "Yeah, I know," I said expressionlessly. "If there's nothing else, I'm going to continue eating with Anna." "George," I took a deep breath and said, "You can just call me by my name." After a brief silence, she replied, "I don't have anything else to say. I'll hang up now." The call ended. Anna looked at me. "George, you were so cold just now." I looked at her and said, "I'm cold to other women, but I'm warm to you." Anna suddenly teased me, saying it was cheesy, and blushed a little. After dinner, Anna said, "If you need money, just let me know. I have 10 million in my account, and if that's not enough, I can ask my dad for more." I knew her family was well off. After all, Alicia's family was well off too, so it was no surprise that Anna's family was also well off. Although I didn't need her money at the moment, hearing her say that made me feel very content. I replied, "I don't need the money for now, but in a couple of days, can I visit your parents?" She asked, "You want to meet my parents?" A faint blush spread across Anna's face. "It's too sudden. I'm not prepared." I asked, "Don't you want me to meet your parents?" She quickly answered, No, I'll call them right now." Her blush deepened. I was about to say there was no need to rush, but Anna didn't give me the chance. She immediately dialed her mom's number. When the call connected, Anna said, "Mom, I have something important to tell you." Her mom's voice came through the phone. "What's the matter, Anna?" "Your future son-in-law wants to come over to meet you and Dad." Anna said with a playful look at me. Her words made me feel nervous. Really, her mom sounded quite happy. Seeing her mom in a good mood, I knew I had to greet her. Hello, Mrs. Anna. George, you're right there? Anna's mom seemed surprised. Yes, Mrs. Anna. Anna and I are having dinner outside. We were just talking about visiting you and Uncle. I'm wondering when you'll be free. Any time works. Tomorrow is fine too. Anna's mom replied. George, I've heard so much about you from Alicia and Anna. I'm curious what my son-in-law looks like. Her warm and welcoming tone eased my nerves. I said, Great, I'll come over in the next couple of days. Good. We'll prepare. Let me know before you come, okay? Chapter 14. Anna's mom quickly said to her, Anna, if you're with George, you better not bully anyone, understand? I know, Mom. How could I bully my future son-in-law? Anna stuck out her tongue, looking really cute. The mother and daughter exchanged a few more words before hanging up the phone. Anna looked at me and said, Look at my mom. She hasn't even met you yet, and she's already so enthusiastic about you. I smiled, and isn't that a good thing? After dinner, Anna and I walked around the area for a bit. She probably noticed I was in a bad mood, and quickly took me to a nearby arcade to play some games. It was something I used to do when I was younger, and it helped me relax. Around 9:30 p.m., I drove her home. About 3 days later, I found a business partner who expressed interest in working with us. This company was far more powerful than Martin's. They said that if we produced a proposal they were satisfied with, they would offer us a 30% premium. In other words, a 50 million order could go up to 60 million or more. I shared this news with the team. Everyone was incredibly excited when they heard. I rolled up my sleeves again, and after a week of busy work, made several revisions to the proposal. Finally, we finalized it and signed a contract with this company. We secured the order. Everyone was thrilled, and I gave the team a 2-day holiday along with some bonuses. David said to me, George, you can call this the blessing in disguise. I nodded in agreement. After 2 days of rest, we got back to work. The very next day, I received a phone call. It was from the investigator I had hired. He said he'd sent the files to me. I confirmed and paid the final balance. I opened the file, and it was about Makoto. After reading it carefully, I discovered that Makoto was a man who used women to get ahead. He had previously spent another woman's money, which led to the woman committing suicide by jumping into a river. His real name wasn't Makoto, it was by Yuntao. As I read through the information, my expression changed slightly. This was a bit more unexpected than I had imagined. This guy had scammed at least 10 women in the past. It seemed like his plan with Willow was no different. I had originally wanted to warn Willow immediately. Then I thought, Willow, like me, was a reborn person. She should be cautious. After all, she had also been reborn and had probably encountered something similar herself. Perhaps this encounter had something to do with Makoto. About a month later, we completed the first order from this new company. They were highly satisfied with our efficiency and quality. They told us that once this project was completed, they would entrust all future orders to us. Everyone was very happy. About a week later, I received a phone call from none other than Martin, the one who had rejected us earlier. Seeing Martin's number, I hesitated for a few seconds before answering. Martin, what's going on? You have time to call me today? Wong. This is really embarrassing. The last order we gave to the other side, they couldn't handle it. Now I'm stuck, it's really tough. Martin sounded embarrassed. I replied, Martin, you're so capable. How could you not handle it? Look, Wong, I'll give the order back to you. You just do me a proposal, and I won't complain. I'll even give you a 10% premium, he said seriously. I thought for a moment and agreed. After all, money coming to you shouldn't be turned down. I called a meeting with Alicia, David, and the team. David was angry, saying, This guy wants to come crawling back. We should have never worked with him. Alicia rolled her eyes at him. There's money to be made. Why not work with them? I agreed with Alicia and said, That's right. Everyone's worked hard recently. Let's finish Martin's order as quickly as possible. The team agreed and left the meeting room. That same day, Makoto called me again and started. Wong, what the hell are you doing? Stealing orders from me. I calmly responded. Nothing personal, just relying on skill. Fine, you'll pay for this. I'll make sure of it. Makoto threatened me. I felt a bit annoyed and muttered under my breath, By Yuntao. He clearly paused for a few seconds. Then, Who's By Yuntao? Who are you talking about? I'm Makoto, all right. Take care of yourself, I said and hung up. What I didn't expect was that this phone call almost led to an accident. One day while driving home from work, a car suddenly swerved towards me. Luckily, I managed to dodge it. But this near accident made me realize one thing. Makoto was a very dangerous person. After some thought, I decided to send Willow the information about Makoto. What she chose to do with it was up to her. I believed she must also harbor hatred towards him. Once I had done that, I couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Now, the company was growing quickly and everything was going smoothly. I also met Anna's parents, and they were very pleased with me. Her mom in particular was extremely warm and friendly. After a few visits to their home, her mom started asking me when I would propose to Anna. I replied, anytime. I quickly told my parents about it. They were happy for me. Although my mom was still a bit disappointed that I wasn't with Willow, since Willow had always been the daughter-in-law she approved of. When my mom actually met Anna, she quickly grew fond of her and urged me to propose to her as soon as possible. Both families agreed, and Anna and I were very much in love. Everything was perfect. We picked a good date, and about a week later, I got engaged to Anna. Chapter 15. It was a lively day. Alicia and David, the matchmakers, were 100% going to be there. The engagement ceremony was completed. I was exhausted, so when I got home, I rested. The next morning, I saw a news article about Makoto. Makoto had been arrested for fraud and intentional injury. He had scammed more than 10 women, which made the news go viral. People were spitting on him with disgust. Disgust so strong it could almost be felt through the screen. At the same time, I received a phone call from none other than Willow. She said on the phone, "George, thank you for helping me." I replied, "I'm not helping you. I'm helping myself." I found Makoto utterly disgusting. Although I couldn't prove it, I suspected that he had something to do with my death in the previous life. There were some clues that pointed to him as someone who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. After all, I had nearly had another car accident. Willow was silent for a moment, then said, "No matter what, I have to thank you. I know Makoto is no good." I hummed in acknowledgement, but suddenly didn't know what else to say. We both fell silent for a while. Then she said, "George, congratulations on your engagement." "Thank you for your blessing," I replied. She continued, "I'm about to go abroad to study, to learn something. If things go well there, I probably won't come back." Her voice seemed to tremble a little. But no matter what, our relationship had become something of the past. We were like strangers now. I said, I wish you all the best, and hope you find happiness." With that, I hung up the phone. About a month later, Alicia and David had their wedding. Anna and I were the best men and maid of honor. In their love, they truly cared for each other and loved each other deeply. I envied them. Of course, I was also thankful that I had Anna by my side now. I held her hand, looked into her eyes, and thought to myself, this was the person I would be happy with for the rest of my life. Willow's side story. After George called, I began packing up my office and the nearby lounge. When I wasn't at home, I mostly stayed at the company, but I didn't want him to know. After all, he had always been so exceptional, and so much had happened between us. My pride constantly reminded me not to bow down, not to admit defeat. Although I was a bit confused as to why he suddenly wanted a divorce, I still felt a slight sense of relief. Maybe we were truly a pair of ill-fated souls. After all these years, we had never really had the chance to live a peaceful life together. Now that we were separating, maybe it was a good thing. But when it came time to actually part ways, the anger and resentment in my heart had all but faded, leaving only an indescribable melancholy. I picked up the photo of the two of us from the desk and was about to put it in the drawer when the phone rang. "Hello, is this George's family? Please come to the Central Hospital." It felt like time stopped in that moment. When I regained my senses, I was already in the car heading to the hospital. To be honest, I couldn't even really recall how I felt at that time. All I remember is that I didn't shed a single tear. It wasn't until I came back from the hospital and returned to our shared home that everything felt real. For some reason, I walked into his study. The photo album, which had been placed at the very bottom of the shelf, caught my eye. I still remembered the last time I saw this album. I had a huge fight with him. But now, seeing it, there was no longer anyone in this world who could share it with me. I took a deep breath and opened the album. The first page was a photo of us from the first time we met. We were still young, and the sun looked beautiful that day. George's eyes were slightly lowered, his lashes casting a shadow on his face. Those were the good old days. Yes, George and I weren't supposed to end up like this. We grew up together. He was my best friend, like an older brother. His hands were skilled. When we went on picnics, he would weave a beautiful flower crown and place it on my head, calling me Little Princess. He was amazing at math. I remember countless afternoons when he patiently explained problems to me in the yard, never getting frustrated with me even though I was slow. His cooking was fantastic: braised pork, maple tofu, all the dishes I loved. He cooked them so well. He'd flick my forehead with his finger, but it didn't hurt. He'd take me to the amusement park and cover my eyes when we went into the haunted house. When I fought with my parents, he'd take me away. I understood his pressure and responsibilities, and he understood my pride and sensitivity. We were the people who knew each other best. Later, I got into the same university as him. On the day he helped me find an apartment, I was still looking forward to the next 4 years of college life together. But then I met another guy. His name was Makoto. He said he liked me, and he took me to the seaside on his motorcycle. The speed was fast, and my heart raced. He asked if I liked him too, and I felt my heart pounding in my chest, unsure. Before that, I always thought I liked George, so I told Makoto the same. Makoto told me, "What you feel for him is dependence, not love. You've always seen him as a brother. Family love isn't the same as romantic love." Makoto might have been right. I had confused my dependence with love. That evening, I sat by the sea with Makoto. The waves crashed against the rocks beneath us. He kissed the back of my hand, and I didn't pull away. Later, I introduced Makoto to my parents. Then I got drunk with George. He stayed over at my house that night, and then the video of us in the elevator at our apartment spread around the school. I couldn't understand why he did that. Makoto reminded me, "Maybe he wants to be with you." I was in disbelief. We'd known each other for so long, and I knew George wasn't like that. That day, it was indeed George who came home with me, and the only ones who knew where our apartment was were me, Makoto, and George. My father said, "If you marry George, we'll get through this crisis." He said this on the phone, and I felt like I understood the truth. First, they used online gossip and people around me to attack me. Then they used the survival of the company to pressure me. In just one night, George seemed to have changed into a different person. I didn't understand why, but as a member of the family, even if it was a marriage alliance, it was something I had to do. So I went to see George. After all, he was George, my childhood friend. He wouldn't treat me badly. He never had. "Marry me. Let's get engaged," I said to George, and I could tell he was happy. For some reason, I also felt good. Maybe it was because no one was gossiping about me anymore. The next time I saw Makoto was at my engagement party. The day I decided to find George, I had already broken up with Makoto. He was upset, but he said he understood my struggles, so he agreed. But looking at his scruffy face, I knew he was probably more upset than he let on. And as for me, how could I get engaged to someone else under these circumstances? I felt at peace. But then George also told me he wanted to cancel the engagement. I was furious, or maybe I was just ashamed. He had pushed me into this situation, and now he was pretending to be the good guy. I thought of him then, thought of Makoto drinking alone in the corner. I slammed the door and left. After marrying George, we got along pretty well. He was still the same as before, not good with words, but he did everything a husband should do. It was like the person who hurt me so much wasn't even him. Sometimes I even subconsciously forgot about that incident, and our relationship improved because of it. But when I ran into Makoto at a social gathering again, he hurriedly dragged me to sit down. I saw the video again, and everything returned to square one. At that time, I did think to myself, since we were already married, George had no reason to put the video out. But looking at the blood dripping from Makoto's lip, I couldn't say anything. I had always felt guilty for Makoto. The George the first remembered would never do something so disgraceful, but he did. The George the first knew would never hit anyone, but he did. I no longer believed anything he said, and I didn't go home. I withdrew into my shell like a snail. Then George died in a car accident. The police said he had swerved to avoid a group of children. He was a very kind person, I knew that. But he also deeply hurt me and hurt another person who loved me. When I came to my senses, the album was still quietly spread out on the desk. In the photo, the young versions of us were still smiling so happily. A single tear fell and blurred the childishly written, "I like you." I rushed to wipe away the water stain, only then realizing that it was my tears. But then I had an accident and was reborn. What I originally thought was an accident turned out to be something Makoto had planned all along. It turned out he never liked me. He only liked my family background. I deeply regretted it. Regretted hurting the one who loved me the most, George, because of Makoto. I hated George for 6 years, so when I was reborn, the first thing I wanted to do was find George, find my George. I wanted to start over with him. But it was too late. He had already found someone he liked, and that person was very nice. She was beautiful and gentle, and he started to distance himself from me. I knew I had hurt him deeply, so I didn't blame him. But at that moment, Makoto came back to approach me. I hated him. I wanted to get revenge on him, and I made a series of plans. I wanted to drag him into the abyss. During this time, my plans were almost discovered by him several times. I thought I wouldn't succeed, and I couldn't get my revenge. But in the end, George stepped forward and gave me some information, and I finally succeeded in getting my revenge. Having gotten my revenge, I decided to move abroad. There was nothing left for me in this country. I happened to get an opportunity to further my studies. Leaving the country, I knew I would never have any more interactions with George in this life. But I would still wish him happiness in my heart for the rest of his life.